Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can hear you. Mm-hmm.
Hey, team. How's it going? Nicole, where are you hiding?
Just try that again.
Just saying good morning, Annalisa.
I'm not telling you.
I saw you. I saw the back of your head walk away, and I thought, I wonder where Nicole is. I didn't get the chance to say hi. So you're close by.
No, it's secret, and I'm staying secret location.
Watch for booby traps. That's all I'll say. So.
Just get IT to track a phone, Tim.
Yeah, I'm sure she's sitting in the office somewhere. Across the corridor, maybe.
Morning, Annalisa, councillors and staff. This is Therese.
Morena, Therese.
Morning, everybody. How are we?
Morning.
Morning, David and
Your way,
everybody.
Murray? Is it raining out at Leaston, Murray?
Yeah, it is, David. It's just set in, slowly drifted in, and it's just been nice and steady, which is great.
Yeah. What about your way, Jenny?
It was raining, but at the moment it's stopped. But I think it's meant to be a pretty rough all day, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? What's happening in the city, Annalisa? You're on
sure
mute,
it was a good weather report, but no.
Yeah, I couldn't hear that. Yeah, rainy but warm. That's my summary.
The one thing about using Zoom is we should all be really good at lip reading by now. What people are saying.
You're on mute. You're on mute. Right.
Who was it talking about the T-shirt? You're on mute.
Yeah.
Is that you, Shane?
Oh, I'm on mute. Morning, everyone. Yes, it was. Yeah, I think it'll be a hot seller in the market. A T-shirt that says "You're on mute." I've floated the idea with a couple of prospective retailers, and they're on board. So, first one to the market wins. T-shirt, "You're on mute." You'll never guess where I am this morning.
Fishing?
No. Oh yeah, I need to change that actually. I'm sitting in one of the council rooms. I totally misread the invite and have turned up to council, so I'm down in one of the other rooms.
I did that to a board meeting last night. Everyone was like, oh no, I think we can meet in person. Let's all meet in person. But I was the only one that ended up meeting in person because people ran out of time. So I had this big boardroom all by myself. while everyone else was teamsing in, but we'll
Yes,
get back to
so
normal soon, won't we?
I was so excited. So it's a heck of an anticlimax for everybody, I think.
I tell you, it's an interesting thing though, is that people are still nervous about going out. And so the big one that we're dealing with at the moment is Anzac Day services, and whether in fact Anzac Day services will take place or not take place. And interesting, the Burnham approach. So Burnham twofold. Number one, they're holding the service inside the base this year, which means that civilians don't have the opportunity to go. And secondly, they will not be making personnel available to attend any Anzac service around, not only around our district, but just period. So it's causing a lot of rethink in a number of areas.
Just carrying on from that, David, what is the policy for our smaller ones? Because I've been rung by several people and I really don't know the answer yet.
Yeah, the answer is who runs those normally, Bob?
Normally run by the school and everybody together, the community committee and the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that,
In that case, it will be up to them to make the decision. And
Okay.
you know, Rolleston, for example, is do we hold it down at the cenotaph, which is the roadworks will be finished, but the cenotaph surrounds are still under repair, or do we hold it at the community centre car park or at the council car park? So again, we've got to go back to that organising group. And the big difficulty we have is everybody's trying to join the conversation at the moment.
Yeah.
Rather than just leaving it for the decision makers.
just in regards to the spring, Taitapu, no change, a short half hour. Lincoln is going to have a short half hour service, and at the memorial, and Springston's going to do the same, have a short half hour at the memorial, but it will involve some road closures, partial road closures, because the cenotaphs are right on the edge of the carriageway. So that's got to be arranged.
Yeah, and I've been having similar discussions with Malcolm in respect to Pebbleton as well. So the key staff member, Bob, to come back to you is Joanne Harkis.
Okay.
So make your direct contact with Joanne. And Elisa, we've gone past 11 o'clock and we are live.
Yep. Morena, good morning and welcome. We'll start off with our karakia. Whakataka te hau ke te uru, whakataka te hau ke te tonga, kia mā kina ke uta, kia mā taratara ke tai, e he ake ane te atakura, he teo, he huka, he hohu, te he Māori ora. And can I have a volunteer to read the oath for me, please?
I'm
I
happy.
could.
No,
You
go
go,
for it.
Murray.
No, you're deputy chair. You go for it.
Oh, I haven't actually. Sorry, I'm just a little disorganized. I would never say that.
Should have it memorised, Nicole.
Oh, I know.
I could read it if you want to.
Thank you, my assistant.
Sorry, that was a surprise, Jess, didn't I?
Let us affirm today that we as councillors will work together to serve the citizens of Selwyn District, to always use our gifts of understanding, courage, common sense, wisdom and integrity in all our discussions, dealings and decisions so that we may solve problems effectively. May we always recognise each other's values and opinions, be fair-minded and ready to listen to each other's point of view. In our dealings with each other, let us always be open to the truth of others and ready to seek agreement, slow to take offence and always prepared to forgive. May we always work to enhance the well-being of the Selwyn District and its communities.
You will.
We will.
Ka pai, Nicole, thank you. I don't believe we have any apologies. You are with
No
us today,
apologies, Madam
Shane.
Chair. And there has been no identified extraordinary business.
Great. Conflicts of interest?
Nothing recorded.
None. Great. That takes us to the minutes. Can I please have someone identify and move that the Minutes of the last hui are a full and true, accurate record.
Councillor Lemon and Councillor Mugford.
Thank you. First and seconder. Great. Takes me on to Chairperson verbal report. I don't have too much to say for this hui. We've got quite a light agenda. There's more in PX, but I was sort of having a reflect last week on, I guess, the last month, and for me personally, and of relevance to Selwyn, as I was lucky enough to attend the World Cup final on Sunday, which I've spoken to David about in great length. Most of you are aware that I'm on the board of Canterbury Cricket, and although most of the audience on that day for that game enjoyed a great day, great weather, and a great game, but there was a few of us in the ground that had done a huge amount of mahi over several years for that one game. That one game was all about getting, well, firstly going back to the earthquakes and actually building the ground, and then the big battle and perseverance of getting the lights. We needed the lights for that one game. So I kind of reflected on that over at the game and on the day, going, there was so much great mahi to get here, and so much disruption along the way, and we managed to get there. We managed to fill it. New Zealand went in the final, but we still managed to fill it. Canterbury came out in great pride to show the world, what a great city we are and how supportive we were. So it's almost a legacy type project that we leave, isn't it? So I was reflecting on that with our role here in Selwyn around, the major sort of projects that we deliver, and a lot of them take a lot longer than we expect, and they cost a lot more than we want them to cost. But if we leave quality projects behind, then it's about your legacy of your role, I guess more at full council rather than audit and risk. But yeah, I think that was sort of my last week event, but of relevance to you and your role as well. But that's all from me. Anyone else was at the managed to make it to the cricket?
Yeah, thanks, Annalisa. I was just going to make a comment. Yeah, we were fortunate enough to attend too, thanks to the tickets that were sent out to council. And I've literally, before this meeting, sent an email off to Andrea Nelson congratulating her on what a fantastic event it was, and the entire series, actually, the entire World Cup. And so I just thought it was fantastic. It was a great showcase for women's cricket and sport in general. And it was, unfortunate the way it's panned out for all those who put that hard mahi in, as you've said. But what a fantastic showcase. It was just amazing. Yeah, so really enjoyed it.
Great. So that's all from me. If someone move my verbal update, please. Thank you, Shane. And a seconder. Sam, thank you. I don't know what my speed of seeing hands go up is. If you manage to do that much faster than me, Sam, when you're online, but
that's okay.
It's a work in progress. Where are those hands?
Just need to also ask for a vote on the minutes and on this resolution. So each time we have a resolution, we'll have a mover and a seconder, which is us putting our hands up.
Oh, yes, sorry.
We can also put it to the meeting just so the minutes can record the acceptance by the meeting. Cool.
Yeah, sorry. So maybe we'll go back to the minutes. If I can have a vote of all in favour, raise your hand. Thank you. And also for my verbal update, all those in favour. Thank you. David, Manager's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. As you noted yourself, Madam Chair, a lightish agenda today, which is not unusual given the time of year. The focus for the management team and key staff is around the preparation and subsequent adoption of the draft annual plan for consultation. Councillors are well versed in that process, and there will be a paper endorsing that adoption in the council agenda for the 13th of April. The next key things that we from an executive team move on are the preparation and signing off of the statements of intent, which will be on the audit and risk agenda in June, bearing in mind, of course, we don't have a meeting in May. Focusing on the response to our work plan. And finally, just an acknowledgement, Madam Chair, that we have an external presentation from CORD today, scheduled for around 12:30, but that there is flexibility attached to that. We will have that before we take a break or close the meeting. Happy to answer any questions, though, on matters of general interest that aren't covered elsewhere in the report.
Thank you, David. Any questions? No? Therefore, could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Murray, and a seconder. Thank you, Nicole. All those in favour? Thank you. Kelvin, move on to the finance and performance report.
Good morning, everyone. We'll kick this off and I'll give a quick series of highlights. Just a reminder, this is for the period 1 July 2021 to 28th of February 2022. Key highlights in this month in terms of financials is a surplus currently at 40.6, 16.5 better than budget. A capital program continues to lag somewhat of where budget is, and we're 19.2 below where the budget sits. If we just move on to regulatory area, another big month of building consents and resource consents. So up 10% on last year, and continue to be heavy demand for that. Pleasingly, though, compliance with legislation improved with the deadlines. We're at 41%, which takes the year-to-date average slightly further up to 32. Facilities impacting with COVID and restrictions, and the tendency, as David mentioned earlier on, around staying at home. So we can see there the community centres are really flatlining, and the swimming load picking up into the February month. Going into our income statement, we've got rates up reflecting population growth. Development contributions again reflecting growth and moving significantly ahead of budget. The subsidies and grants include the unbudgeted flood claim of 3.7 and the Daffodil to Pines government contribution to that. And we're, as we said earlier, around building consents and resource consents, the revenues that are coming from those are above plan, as we've seen those being much higher. In the operating expense category, the most significant things that are unfavourable to budget there are the Five Waters maintenance contract, which we have with CORD, which was signed post the LTP being prepared last year, and that is sitting currently 1.3 above budget and likely to finish around 2 million over that. And we've discussed that at the workshops around the preparation of this annual plan. This will be a go-forward matter. Transport, sitting at 5.8 ahead, but we've got a contribution of 3.7 coming from NZTA around flood claims. Refuge, really being it's up in terms of tonnage, and one of the reasons for that is the weather we're receiving here, seeing over summer, which is hot and wet. So your grass is growing fast, therefore organics and is up high. And that's the main movers in the OPEX. Moving to page, I've lost my page numbers, sorry. To the next page on number 3 on surplus before depreciation. Key in here is around that wastewater and transport, which we've already covered. Now we'll move past the funding impact statement into capital expenditure. And as said previously, we're running well back on what the budget expectation was this time of year. So we're 19.2 back. It's about 41% of the budget spent. Moving through to the balance sheet, the main item here to look at is we drew down some additional funding, a further 15 million during the period, which takes us to 80 million. 5 million of that will reduce in the next month as we repay an amount maturing in the April period. In the cash forecast space, we look like we'll be sitting at that level of borrowing through the end of the financial year, which is significantly lower than what we expected in the plan. Moving into performance measures, you'll see there's a few measures which have moved into amber this time round. There's no explanation there on them, but they are all COVID related, and that, as we said earlier, the impact of people not wanting to get out and about as much. Building consents issued on statutory time frame up to 32, so it's up 1, but we did have a material movement in the month, which is really pleasing to see, and a continuation of that will move that measure going forward. So we'll leave it there, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Calvin. Murray, see your hands up.
Yeah, thanks, Annalisa. Chief Calvin, just a couple of things. You've actually answered one of them. I'll just touch on it again. But contract service delivery, I see there meeting and exceeding. If we were to get a measure that didn't, we'd get a report on that, and where it hasn't been met or exceeded, just for future reference. I assume that would be reported to us. If we go through, sorry, that's page 14. You've made commentary about the transport costs. Is that the final payment, Kelvin, that final reimbursement?
Yeah, that will be the final position, 2.1 from memory, deficit that we'll have to find. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I guess the biggest concern there from our perspective, page 19, is that delivery of the capital investment. I guess we've got to keep a watching brief on that, and COVID won't help, no doubt, as well with lockdowns and what have you. But that's probably a major concern to us. It always is, that delivery of contracts. Sorry, did I say page 19? And you touched on the borrowing costs. I just was going to get it in the debt position, just wondering whether that 5 million was a repayment, and so you've clarified that. So thank you. Murray, just to clarify the measure that wasn't met.
So sorry, so if it's with our contractors, they've got performance measures to meet. We used to get a graph of each of those contracts. So the water contract and the rubbish, the refuse contract, fines and etc. And it used to give us a percentage of how they'd met those various parameters. I'm not asking for that every month, but if we do get one that isn't met, it would be nice to know that we're not, what's not being met.
There's a summary of the month's performance on page 13.
I missed that. Did I? Apologies if I did. Usually, yeah, we used to get it as a graph, and I'm not suggesting we need to have that in the contract, but yeah, just to understand if we aren't being met as to what it's not being met and why, and whether there's a concern for us as a.
Any other comments, Murray, on that? That's all good. Bob.
Yeah, just on rates collection, how are we going with that? Have we got anything that's worrying at the moment? Are there any really long outstanding ones? Have we got any that have to go to court or anything like that? How are they progressing?
Rates collection is fairly positive at the moment. There are a few, as mentioned, around who have taken it off their own bat to discount their rate bills due to mandate requirements, which are all being dealt with on a separate basis. We always have a series of we'll always have a group of ratepayers that will end up being sent through to banks for mortgagee settlements, so their mortgage will be extended and the bank will pay us the rates. That carries on, but it's no larger than what it is in any other previous year. The collection is favourable. I think if we referred back to the last quarterly report on Treasury, it shows those numbers, and they were all positive to where they were this time last year.
Thank you. Shane?
Apologies, I'm just working off my phone and it's being a bit difficult to manage it. Morena, kia ora, Calvin. Thank you very much for your report. Page 14, yes, it's great to see the turnaround. So I'd like to commend the regulatory team for the increased efficiency in the LIM turnaround, and just wondered whether the cooling in the market has resulted in a catch up in that sense. But initially, just a big kudos to the team there for working so hard to get that under control, because it was out of control for some time there. So it's great to see. It's also great to see the facilities coming back on stream. And I'm just wondering, the community facilities, it's a great turnaround there, and it's looking to great uptick and a great support, as Annalise mentioned, out from our local community to start utilising the facilities again and start bringing the strength back in there. And I'm wondering if you see that continuing into the next quarter. Would be quite obvious, but I just wonder how the finance or performance team see that taking into the future. That's page 14. Also wanted 13, sorry, page 14. I wonder if Te Ara Āti has been a major contributor in the facilities network, and getting that income at 13% higher over the period of time for August. Page 15, 4% lift. Oh, actually, it is answered. Sorry, I've written that down, but then I see you've actually answered that in the commentary, the 4% lift in the investment. So thank you for that. I've mentioned the community facilities. Transport, Murray's touched on it as well. Is there an element of insurance to that as well, or is that what you have mentioned with the funding coming through from Utahi? I've got a note here, given the majority of the increase in consulting fees seems to in the three areas mentioned, how is council working to reduce those costs by increasing internal capacity in terms of free fee revenue and the likes? 17, how is the sale of land related to community services? Obviously, with supporting some of our deficient areas by selling some of the land here, and the commentary 2.27 variance includes the gain on sale to guys own land passes. How is it related? Is that intertransferable? Say the sale of land assets, can that be utilised in other sectors within our efficient areas? I've asked about transportation. Murray has as well. I've got a note here, wastewater, when in particular budget exceeds expectations in the positive, is the surplus then earmarked for that particular line, i.e. wastewater? Sorry, mate, I know that's a lot of questions, and it's just hard operating over Zoom to get these the face-to-face contact, to get the pre-context in. So thank you.
Okay, I'll just run through that list. So just regarding building consents and turn down, we're not seeing that. So we saw a uptick of 10% on last year in terms of that. So we're not seeing any reduction in that. What we are seeing, I think, is confusing this, is that there's still a demand for new builds, but the price of sales for existing properties is the thing that is coming down. So there's still a demand for new property, and that demand is going to continue. Regarding facilities and attendance and various things, Denise will have her standard facilities and community services report coming up, I believe, at the next, possibly at the next agenda, next council meeting, which covers that in a hell of a lot more detail. And note there that Denise has put some comments there in the chat. Around the floods and roading, insurance is more around our property and not in the roading network, so there won't be anything significant in insurance coming through on that. The consultant spend, yes, it is up, but again, it's up because a lot of that consulting work goes into the preparation of building consents and resource consents. And in the annual plan, we've talked about increasing the staff numbers to deal with that, which offsets the use of consultants. So what you'll see is a uptick in staff costs, a drop in consultants, but by using our own staff, we're anticipating we'll have a hell of a lot more efficiencies gained out of that. The sale of iZone land, why it sits in community services, it's community services and facilities, and the budget for that sat within the facilities area. The proceeds from that have already been captured along the way in terms of allocation. And then just on the wastewater piece, the positive variance, Shane, can you just refer to what that was?
Right, Galvin, apologies. I was referring to surplus that gained. Is that surplus then reinstituted back into that infrastructure or that line item? So if a surplus is gained through whatever reason, is that surplus then put back into that particular line? i.e.
Yes, it
wastewater?
is. Yeah, it goes back into there, but of course it'll be. It may be that the gains sitting in there in wastewater, well, they will be relating to some vested assets, which subdivisions have and various things like that, and BCs, which will be going to funding capital programs, not to offset operating costs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Murray, did you have another question, or you haven't put your hand down?
Yeah, no, I did. Sorry to have another bite of the cherry, Kelvin. Sorry, scroll through enough of that contract service level thing and there on the screen. Understand, from that, it's just a different way of reporting. Although they're exceeding the expected, and meeting requirements, the old delivery, the old report would show, say, half a dozen metrics that were considered as part of that, and occasionally there'd be one that would be below the expected line. If we had that, whatever they were measuring, whatever that performance metric is, if that was consistently month on month below, we would have the opportunity to see that. So it's really about, whilst the actual may be more than the expected on average of all the metrics measured, maybe only measured that's consistently below expectations. It's about understanding whether that causes us a problem, particularly, say it was around water services with a number of breaches of consent, then that's really quite important to us as an audit risk committee. So it's just how we would understand we've got something like that occurring. Whilst the average may well exceed, there may, as I say, maybe a metric that's being underperforming month on month.
Yeah, so that is the performance for the month. And if anything was below expectation, there would be an explanation at that point in time. And we could reinstate the whole series of graphs in the appendix, but again, if we're reporting on anything that's under at that period of time, I think we'd cover that off.
Yeah, that's exactly, that's what I was trying to articulate, Kelvin. What was the average of all of those metrics may well meet it, as long as we have got a breach, that we do understand what that breach is and whether it's consistently happening. So yeah, be happy with that. Thank you.
Annalisa, you're on mute.
Apologies. Thank you for that. Some great questions, very comprehensive questions. So I haven't really got too much to add. I did have, and it was more a reminder, can you remind me how the Burnham reconnection revenue, I know we someone told us when we actually did our site visit, but is that a one-off, or is that reoccurring uplift in income that we get? So the 6, because it was 6.8, and then there was a 6.3 variance, which said for the connection. So is that when you say connection, is that?
It's a capital
reoccurring revenue. Right.
Yeah, so it'll be a one-off. But
it's a one-off.
Yeah, but they are charged a rate for
a
waste.
higher rate. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And I've probably asked this question before, but development contribution. So I obviously I understand, you know, what it is, but the number is, it's always well above budget, isn't it? So I was kind of reflecting on that in the last couple of days, wondering, you know, what is that time lag? Like why is it that we can't get our budget number closer? Because we must have some kind of lead time of understanding of the developments that are in place or upcoming. Why is there such a huge variance kind of year on year?
Yeah, it's a good question and reasonably complex. So there's a few elements to it, and one is around population growth and the decision that will be adopted around what numbers we'll take through to an LTP on growth, and we generally take a more conservative approach so that we're not overstating revenues and plans and putting in cash in the budget that may not arrive. Two, yes, there are consents that we would know about that are in train, and we could put the revenues in, and generally they are included, but it is variable in terms of timing. And then finally, these are invoiced and payable as and when they get to the final point of the completion of development, and therefore we're at somewhat a mercy of the developers in terms of timing for them. I would, from a management of financials, I would sooner be on this side of the budget than on the other side, and be looking for additional.
Yep. Right, understandable. And the only other comment I was going to make is obviously the huge increase in interest rates in the last couple of days, isn't it? So you'll be pleased that we locked in all that debt and rates, but I know we did the Treasury report last month, but with the movement in the last week or so, is that, I mean, we can obviously cover it in a couple of months' time, but will that have any impact on your Treasury position?
On the current position, no, but on a go forward, yeah, debt will be a little bit more expensive. Interesting part, looking at the longer term curves, they're flattening off. So yes, in the shorter term, the curve is heading skyward pretty quick, but in the longer term, it's flattening off to show that the terminal value of interest, which the market expects, is not going to climb too high. And we need to put this in context of, yes, they're high rates and compared with the recent history, but in a longer term history, they're not high at all.
No, just compared to what we've had for the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you, Calvin. No other questions. Can I please have someone to move Calvin's report, please? Deborah. Oh, sorry, Deborah, did you have a question? Did I miss you?
No, I was just moving the report. I've got questions for the next section, though.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah, to move it, Bob to be the seconder, and all those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. Right, major projects. Craig, are you on mute, Craig?
Please. I'm just sitting beside Craig, and he's definitely got a technical issue at the moment, which is trying to resolve.
Headphones, that's what happens to me.
Madam Chair, I think we almost need a sign that you hold up when someone's on mute, that comes up like this, you're on mute, and they're back down again. Although it may not have been mute, so excuse me.
I think it's headphones. That's what happens to me. I've got these fancy new headphones, but they're a little bit temperamental.
Still on mute, Craig.
Right, this time, bloody IT. If we look at page 27, we start off at the Selwyn Aquatic Centre, still on my list of reporting because we still haven't quite finalised the account yet. There is still just a couple of items which we're negotiating on for the variations, but in general terms, we'll find that I've allowed for those variations in a worst case situation. So we will be about $1 million over budget, which considering we were reporting quite substantially higher amounts, and that their end result has been quite good. That's the $1 million overspend is coming in between the construction. It's almost even between construction, the unexpected maintenance, and the ordinary maintenance that was done. They're generally about $330,000 each. So that will remain on the list until such time as I get the final account to verify the final figure. Tiara tier on page 28, same thing, still waiting for the final account. They're almost there on that, but that's come down when the final credits and debits have been added up, what have you. We've now only 1.17 over budget, and that's come in because we've been variations have exceeded by 810,000, which is split between the professional fees and the construction costs, and our methodology of calculating the land and car parks changed. So we're sitting at 1.17 at the present time. Page 29, the infrastructure for roading and car parks next door to the Tiara Centre. It's business as usual there, continuing to place the car parks, that the infrastructure is all in place. We're now looking at sealing. We've put in curbing, so that's just moving along. We're forecasting that will actually be project will be delivered on time and on budget at this stage. Just before we go any further, all the risks on this on all the projects here haven't changed since last meeting. They're still sitting medium to high, and it's all COVID related, and the interest rate impact on some of these projects is relatively high. Town Square, that's the area around Tiara was completed. We're now pricing stages 2 and 4. And we've got part of the that contract is on hold because we need to wait until we've completed designs of the surrounding buildings. We can't put in all the tiles and looking quite flash and then start having construction equipment trogging all over them and needing replacing. So that's on hold. The development company has started construction on building D, which is on the south side of the square. Moving on to Rolleston Reserve Development, page 31. The Century Garden north of Tiara is completed. We tendered for the youth zone construction, and that came in quite a lot higher than what we'd budgeted. We then negotiated with them, and council approved a construction budget of 2.7 with an additional 200,000 for contingencies. It's forecast to be completed by the end of December this year. The total of the project should be completed on time and slightly over budget at this stage. Foster Park, page 32. We're 100% complete on all the earthwork and services. The installation of both turfs is about 3 weeks behind in its program, but is forecasted to be completed by May, which is important for the start of the winter program. We expect it to be slightly over budget on at year end. So, but we'll keep an eye on that and report accordingly. Pebbleton Reserve and Extension, page 33. Earthworks and services are all complete. The concrete working, which includes footpaths, cycle paths, the cricket pitch, is 50% complete and will be fully completed by the end of March. There is some delays due to wet weather, but the project is very close to program. From the financial perspective, the current estimate is the project will be slightly over time and on budget. It's a long-term project with various stages, and it, when you looking out, it goes out to far as 28, 29. So this is a very long-term project, the development of Pebbleton Reserve. Rolleston Drive, an intersection upgrade, page 34. The sewer, water mains and the piping of stock water has been completed. The trenching of the electrics for the traffic lights is all complete, and we're expecting the paving to be completed or commenced by the mid to late March. We have two separate projects within this one project, but they've been done by the same contractor, so we've combined them into one report. And the variations to date are 126,000, with 95 being approved for payment. If anyone wants to know how those variations are split up between each project, I have that information and can easily send it on. Pines 4, page 35. This involves the construction of a new clarifier and an upgrade of the RAS pump station. The good thing about staff got on to procuring all the critical elements for this project in advance, and so far we're now 90% complete with no likely delays. The cost to date for the design and supply of critical elements, and there's only been minimal variations against this project since progressing on time and on budget. Daffodil sewer trunk line, page 36. 65% of the total pipeline has been laid. They've got 6 crews working. The pipe laid to date is, while it's well below well behind the original timeline, it's only marginally behind what they have revised the timeline for. And the lost productivity is due to health and safety issues requiring the site to be shut down. Rework by some contract area has also been required. But the good news is, as at March, which I've only just found out, which is good, is that sufficient pipe has been delivered to the site and enough to complete the project. I've been mentioning in previous reports that supply is always in doubt because of COVID. So that's a good news story there. The design for the pump station and Daffodil is complete. Construction timelines for the pump stations have been revised, with Daffodil to be completed by mid-August and Kui complete by the end of August. This is a direct result of the inability to supply materials, despite the early procurement program that's in way. It's all around freight delays. The financials on it, the final cost of this project is estimated to be 18.6 and 20.42. Council have approved a further 2 million in the annual plan, which should bring it up to the lower end of what we expect. DIA funding 10.6, and pleased to report that we will have achieved the use of that money by the end of March, which is really good, which DIA had extended it to the end of June because we were one of the few councils that were actually adhering to the shovel-ready projects. But it turns out we don't need to actually have that extension of time, which is really good. The Daffodil water infrastructure on page 37. I've mentioned that this project is part of several projects, all to do with Daffodil, and but this particular bit, we've drilled a new bore, and we've upsized all the water mains in Daffodil to actually take care of growth. Cost to date just for the drilling of the new bore and the upsizing of various water mains to cater for future growth. Wastewater treatment plant, the water treatment plant upgrade, page 38. This is part of the same project. It's the main part about that is that the internal fit out of the water treatment plant has commenced. The financials cost to date are for the design and construction of the water treatment plant, and the costs are forecast to be 240,000 over budget because there was late inclusion of a chlorine treatment and the requirement to upgrade the power that supplies the water treatment plant. Last but not least, page 39, the Pebbleton Reservoir and water treatment plant. It's the water treatment plant is in the design phase. We've started the purchase in March for the advanced purchase of long lead time items. That includes the equipment to service the water treatment and the generator. Current lead times will see the completion of this project pushed out to about March 2023. Cost to date have been just for the initial design, the drilling of the new deep bore, and the construction/commissioning of the temporary water treatment plant. They also include the connection of the temporary water treatment plant to the town reticulation. As the contract has not yet been awarded, the estimate, which is showing that we're going to be well over budget, is a staff estimate of what we believe, based on current pricing, is what the water treatment plant will cost us. But until we actually get firm figures from a successful contractor, we won't know, but I'll keep on reporting on this. Just on the reporting, before I take questions, I've been looking at the majority of the projects that we are now reporting on are all part of a greater project within an area, the likes of Daffodil, and I'm looking at revamping the reporting so that we can actually see what the total project is costing, rather than looking at individual projects and sort of saying, well, I believe this one will be over, this one will be under, but we're looking at it from a total project perspective. And in doing that, I am attempting, well, I've already worked out the costs, but by putting in the development of the Rolleston Town Centre, all its components going back from 2 years ago when we did Tennyson Street and Car Park 1 through to the lights and the upgrade of Rolleston Drive, putting them all together and saying this one project has cost X amount of dollars. So with a little bit of luck, at the next meeting, I'll be able to provide you with a summary of that in a form that's easily readable. Questions?
Thank you, Craig. Murray?
Thanks, Craig. Douglas's screen is now looking better. Just a couple of things. SAC is great to see that's going to come in under the expected exceedance of forecast budget. I guess the only comment I've got there, Craig, is that some of that unplanned maintenance, although we've approved the expenditure on it, in previous council meetings, an understanding of how some of that is going to be recompensed. I don't know whether I need to say this, but obviously we've got some previous work on the existing building found to be substandard, so we're still really needing to see the final wash up of that as part of that report. So I'm just not sure whether you want to make a commentary now or whether you want to put that in PX. Going through to Rolleston Town Square and the Reserve, the difficulty I've got with that is because it's a lot of little projects or a lot of individual contracts, it could very easily get away on us, and if each one of them comes in a little above budget, ultimately that could be a lot above budget, and it's now we're keeping tabs on the greater project as a whole. So it would be very easy for that to escalate quite quickly. So I'd be interested in your comments there. And the final one really is just whether we've had any claims with the most recent, with the Omicron outbreak, whether we've had any force majeure requests or claims. Yeah. Thank you.
On the last one, Murray, no. I'm not aware of any other. Douglas may have a different view on that. You're muted, Douglas.
Yep. Can you hear me, Craig?
Yeah.
Yep. So the force majeure, we have had 2 claims on 2 of the contracts. One is stage 2 civils and the town centre as well. So we're just working through the relevance of those claims currently.
Okay. On your the question regarding the town centre development, while I'll report on a higher level, Murray, I still will be doing all the work underneath, so I can still break everything out into its component parts. Was there anything else?
No, that's good.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Craig.
Deborah, I think your hand was up next.
Excuse me for not coming on video. Look, I have a question around page 31. We have the Rolleston Reserve Development, and we have a funding from development contributions at 71.6%, and then we have the reserve targeted rate, which is not infilled, which I calculate must be 29.4%. And then we actually look at the percentage of funding out of the district, the reserve targeted rate. When you go to Pebbleton, you'll note that 73% of that project is funded out of DCs, with only 70% funded out of the district targeted rate. Now, that variance just seems out of kilter to me with regards to comparing projects within a certain township and projects outside a certain township with regards to the contribution levies. That's one question. And the other one is page 36, Daffodil sewage. I guess it's around a worry that a contractor missed, you know, $1.6 million from a contract. And I'm just wondering, look, what is council's policy around, you know, where a contractor could be seen to buy a contract but then can't deliver it within budget? Thank you.
Douglas will answer your first question, Deborah. You're muted, Douglas.
Just difficult trying to drive a more technical machine, Craig. That's my problem. The DC income percentages are different for a number of reasons. First off, they are in different wards. One is Selwyn Central and one is Springs, and they have to be driven by the population growth in those wards. So that's what drives the difference. You're not getting the same consistent percentage there. Just Craig made a salient point about Pebbleton and in terms of timing. As you all know, there's quite a bit of pressure off of plan changes at the moment being considered around Pebbleton, and we are, Mark Rikers has just done some work on population growth across the areas in the last couple of weeks, and we will probably be needing to do Pebbleton the next stage a lot sooner. So yeah, we're just alive to those changes, which is what you'd expect from us.
Okay, thanks, Douglas. With regard to the contractor figure, the amount of money that was put up to council where they approved 16.9 didn't advise what was excluded. Gareth Morgan could probably allude a lot more to this than what I can, but this was put to council, that figure. So perhaps Gareth could say.
I can do if you want, Craig. Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Gareth.
It's not a case of the contractor has bought a contract. Through any life cycle of any contractor, there's ins and outs, there's variations, there's increased scope, there's changes that are made, and the figures that you're seeing is a forecast value of where that contract's going to be at the end of it. Bearing in mind, of course, it's a measure and value contract. It's not a fixed price contract as well. Quantities differ when you get into the ground. So I can assure you, Councillor Hassan, it's not a situation that the council, a contractor has bought this contract, has come in low and is driven for variations. Not saying that some contractors probably don't do that in the market, but it's certainly not the case this one.
So just to add to that,
I guess what alerted to me was, do we have a policy at that level where if there is a shortfall in a budget from a contractor as to who actually has to pay? And I've just read in chat, so thank you, Murray, about your comment. And I guess, you know, at council, maybe we're always picking up the shortfall, but I'm just wondering, extending it out a little bit made me think about the policy for contractors.
Well, we're not always picking up the shortfall. Every contract that's let under a formal contract, say the New Zealand Standard 3910, will have an engineer to contract, and any variation request has to go through a process to be assessed and validated. We're not always picking up that. There's equally as many variation requests which are presented to us, which are rejected. I won't go into details in public forum, but even this week on the Daffodil pipeline, we've rejected some costs that Cord came forward for on this contract because they did not substantiate and they did not stack up under the contract. So there is a process in place.
Oh, thanks, Gareth, for at least explaining that. I guess a little bit concerning reading some of these projects is the variations in the professional fees. Is there any way possible that, you know, we can have some upfront costs and so we're not getting those variations in the professional fee contracts?
I can if you want. From a general professionals, again, like with construction contracts, if scope changes, if there's alterations to the design or there's some additions, that requires additional design work. So however much effort you put in up front, and there is huge effort to try and get professional fees into locked lump sums, it's not always possible. Things do move, things do change, things need to be redesigned, and that comes at a cost, unfortunately. People don't do things for free.
I might just jump on there because I had a comment on my list, which is exactly to Deborah's point. So understand, I think it was, let me just check which project. Oh, Rolleston Square. So, you know, quite a significant increase in consulting fees. So obviously understand if there's increase in scope, there's likely the match effect is going to be, there's going to be increased consulting fees. Yep. But what a good variant or good information for the committee would be is the additional consulting fees that are not linked to additional scope. Does that make sense? So if what is that when you, because we've got one bucket that just says consulting fees, but can we split that to say, well, actually, yes, we've got this huge amount of variance in consulting fees, but 80% of it relates to additional scope. So then we go, well, that's understandable because at least additional scope is additional capital, hopefully. But where we would be concerned is if the additional consulting fees related to things were just taking longer or required more work and we actually weren't getting any additional value out of it. So is it possible to break that down? Have I made?
I've got that information already. This is just a summary of the, if you like it, I can give you that.
Because I think that's what Deborah's getting at. I think that's the bit that we as a committee would be concerned about. I mean, if it's additional scope, then it's additional capital and it's additional value. So, you know, we've obviously, and management has agreed to that, so that's fine. But our concern would be where it's not linked to additional scope.
Yep, can do.
Only where it's significant, not for every single project and every time you have a variance. But if there's I mean, you can work out as management what, you know, use your judgment on where it's significant. But if it is significant, then give us that breakdown.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I jumped in there, but I'd rather than come back to it later. Shane. Sorry, Deborah, is it your full questions answered?
Yes, no, that's fine. And thanks, Annalise, for clarification.
Great. Shane.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Craig, for the report. Yes, some good, robust discussion there, and I'll discuss it a bit further, I guess, not wanting to dwell on it. But page 27, in relation to the SAC extension, but not specific to this report, and Murray's already touched on it. We've brought up a couple of points in the past that still haven't been closed, and it's coming up, in my opinion, to about a year now. So I'd like that addressed in PX. Page 29, I continue to find the term, find the term financial risks due to supply chain, or the cost of financial risk due to supply chain confusing. I understand in relation to context of some projects that's been accurately mitigated. And I'm just worried that if we continue to use this term, it can be seen as somewhat of an excuse. So I'm just interested to understand what specific material, i.e. is it asphalt, do we see being an increased cost due to supply chain and labour? Obviously, that's a huge issue for everybody out there at the moment. At page 4, sorry, I've skipped a couple of pages here. Yeah, so the Daffodil trunk sewer line, we've all talked about that just now and well summarised. And Annalise and Deborah, you've nailed it really. So just my notes here. Does the original variation? The original variation only applies to the existing or agreed contract. So does the 1.6 million or 1.62 million oversight that's reported, that's not included in that variation? Is that an extra? And you know, I don't want to point fingers, but it would seem that it's been an oversight from either this committee, this council, or the council itself. So we need to continue to work hard to mitigate that risk and get on top of it, because in terms of scope creep, and thanks very much for that term, Annalise, I know everyone's using it now, it's more of a cost creep, and that continues to come through. And that's something that I guess we've sort of, you've mentioned, Annalise, in terms of these variations which continue to escalate. And, you know, it's quite a common theme now, look straight for an escalation of costs. And while their best effort has been made to reduce that cost, it's still it still continues to increase. So I want to know how we can add value, how we can understand that process and assist to reduce that in anything in our powers that we can do. But that's all I have at this point. Thank you.
Okay. I think the SAC question and the Daffodil trunk sewer should be dealt with in PX. The supply chain issues are, from the risk perspective, I have them in there purely from my own perspective as a general risk. Things like asphalt, and if it's an increase in that, I have no insight into the actual cost of asphalt, only the fact of looking at the petrol pump prices and saying, oh, that might have an effect. But to be able to break down the supply chain issues, I have no real feel for that, apart from the fact that I know it's going to hit us, and it is impacting us at the present time. So sorry, I can't be more specific than that, Shane. But and you're on mute. You're on mute. Your T-shirt.
I need to wear my own T-shirt. You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, and thank you very much for your answer. And in terms of your summary, will that summary also have a variation total as well?
Certainly. It'll probably cover one project might cover 2 slides. I'll be putting a lot more information in, but when you've got a project, which an overarching project, for the likes of Foster Park, it can be broken down to 6 or 7 individual projects. So we need to be able to look at it from its entirety, and that might take quite a bit of reporting. But it's not to say I haven't got the information now, it's just pulling it all together. So that you guys can look at it in one on one sort of source, one podium of truth, so to speak.
I think the message from Shane, you know, he's put it very nicely, and I guess if I'm a little bit more blunt, is that it's great. You know, we're on a journey with project risk management, so you know we've come a long way. We're recognising what the key project risks are, but and how do I put this? It's not in a way that doesn't come across too blunt, but don't get lazy, I guess is what Shane's saying. Don't go, oh, we've got 4 risks here, so we just every quarter it's the same 4 risks. You know, they're pretty big risks, and it's the supply chain one, it's the increasing interest rate, and that they're real risks. But maybe it's what good looks like going forward is that can we have a little bit more detail around that? So if we think it's the supply chain risk is a real risk for this project, which of course it is at the moment, what is it in the supply chain that's causing that risk to go up? And we don't expect you to have an understanding of the price of asphalt, but we do expect you to have an understanding of what the key drivers in the supply chain for your project that is causing that cost to go up. So yeah, a little bit more where those, and it's only 5 or 6 risks that we're talking about, but a little bit more detail on those 5 or 6 risks where they're significant.
Sure, can do.
Kelvin, did you want to jump in there, or?
Yes, I do. Look, I think we should be workshopping this discussion point we're having right now. No disrespect to some of the questions being asked, but they are diving into a degree of management as opposed to governance. And yes, putting more information around the risk register may be useful on a high risk. I would be loath to bring in lower risk. The point here is the project managers are running risk management on their things, and that's the key thing that needs to be understood by this committee, as opposed to diving into the detail of these risks and how we've assessed them as a project team. Otherwise, we will run into debates on management of projects as opposed to governance of projects, and that's quite a distinction. The contract points are raised around Daffodil pipeline. The 1.6, if you read the explanation there, is items that were not included in the original contract letting of Cord and relate to things that SDC are doing. So purchase of land, professional fees, not Cord related stuff. So the performance of Cord is not in question here. Deborah raised a point around where costs lie. Look, if a contractor has not completed the works in an appropriate way and has to do reworks, yes, there's a discussion around recompense on that and who the cost should lie with. If there's scope change, that's an agreed variation, and those variations are agreed at a project level. And should further budget be required, that would be a head back to council for an additional budget approval. If we were to head down a path of trying to lock away contract risk and head for fixed price contracts, we will be paying more on the long run for these, because as a contractor, we're buying insurance off them that they won't go over a certain amount, therefore we'll pay more. And so it's just being mindful of what the right balance is. Quite often a useful method is open book contracts with contractors, so you can see what they're pricing in and what they're not pricing in, and especially when we have a council controlled organisation, there's a bit more flexibility for us to take an open book approach. But I think just need to be mindful of those risks. And sometimes if you look at the PIR for Cell and Aquatics and goes to Craig's point around consolidation into programs, you'll get a much better view of what's being delivered as opposed to the detail on each single project. So you can look at this as a collective as opposed to individual projects, which because one goes over, one may go under, so on. We need to bring those together to look at how they're managed as a whole.
Any other questions? I don't have any more to add. I did have a question around the Foster Park turf. Is that expected to be, is that a hard deadline of delivery for practical completion? So does it absolutely need to be delivered before winter season, or this winter season sport kicks in?
The best it will be delivered now is about mid-May, and we've been in discussions with both sports to make them aware. I mean, reality is it's all unfortunately down to COVID through their workforces. So it's and both sports are happy with that. So thank you.
Yeah, I guess the point I was getting at is it an absolute, it has to be finished by a certain date, or it'll just get finished when it gets finished? So is there a chance that there would need to be an accelerated work program, which brings, potentially more cost?
Like we know that they worked over this weekend, but there's been no talk about claim on council for accelerating it. I think their problem is they need to be finished with us so they can move on to their next turf project. So there's been no suggestion of an extension timeframe.
Okay. No other questions in relation to the major projects report? No. Therefore, can I have someone please move the report? Thank you, Sam, and a seconder. Thank you, Shane. All those in favour, raise your hand. Thank you. And that is about it. If I could have a resolution, someone to move us into PX, please. Thank you, Shane, and a seconder. I saw Sam, and all those in favour. Great. Hui closed.
Madam Chair, can I suggest we take a 2-minute break just to allow the public part of the meeting to clear and then kick back into the PX